You think you know New York. You've walked its sidewalks, ridden its trains, maybe even brag about living there. But right now, beneath your feet, behind doors you pass every single day, there are places the city does not want you to see. Vaults holding 7,000 tons of gold. Islands where 1 million bodies lie in unmarked graves. Tunnels so deep and so forgotten that the city itself lost track of them. 20 places in New York you are physically, legally, and absolutely not allowed to visit. And every one of them is real. The pneumatic transit tunnel beneath Broadway. In 1870, a man built a secret subway under New York City. Nobody gave him permission. Almost nobody knew it was happening. Alfred Ely Beach, an inventor and publisher, constructed a full passenger transit tunnel beneath Broadway. It ran 1 block, from Warren Street to Murray Street in Lower Manhattan, just 312 feet long. But what he built inside, that tunnel would stun even modern engineers. Beach disguised the project as a pneumatic mail delivery tube. Workers dug at night to avoid attention from the notoriously corrupt Tammany Hall political machine. When the tunnel opened to visitors in 1870, reporters walked into a waiting room that belonged in a Fifth Avenue mansion. A fountain with live goldfish, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings on the walls, a grand piano in the corner, a single cylindrical car large enough to hold 22 passengers, sat on tracks. A massive fan called the Western Tornado blew the car forward. A reversa fan sucked it back. Beach charged 25 cents a ride. Over 400,000 people rode it in its first year. Then politics killed the project. Boss Tweed blocked the expansion permits. When funding finally appeared in 1873, the financial panic wiped out overnight. The tunnel was sealed and forgotten. For 39 years it sat under Broadway, untouched. In 1912, subway construction crews broke through a wall and found the waiting room still furnished. The car still sat on its tracks. They sealed it again and built over it. Today, nothing remains you can visit. The tunnel was absorbed into modern subway infrastructure. But somewhere beneath Broadway, pieces of the first subway in American history still sit embedded in concrete. You will never reach them. And the next hidden space is one you walk right past, without ever knowing is hollow inside. If that story made you pause, a like on this video tells us these forgotten histories are worth digging up. The interior of the Washington Square Arch. The arch at the north end of Washington Square Park is one of the most photographed landmarks in Manhattan. Thousands of people walk beneath it every single day. Almost none of them know the arch is hollow. There's a staircase inside. The original arch was a temporary wooden structure built in 1889 to celebrate 100 years since George Washington's first inauguration. The permanent marble version came in 1895, designed by Stanford White, one of the most famous architects of his era. Inside the Western Pier, a narrow spiral staircase winds upward to a rooftop terrace that overlooks the park from roughly 77 feet in the air. A small door at street level, barely visible unless you know where to look, leads to the staircase. It has been locked and closed to the public for decades. The official reason is structural concern. The interior stonework has deteriorated. The passages are too narrow for safe public access. But on January 23, 1917, that door was not locked. A group of Greenwich Village artists, poet Gertrude Drick, painter John Sloan, and Marcel Duchamp among them, climbed the staircase to the roof. They fired cap pistols into the cold night air. They hung Chinese lanterns from the parapet, and they declared the birth of the free and independent Republic of Washington Square. It was absurd, it was theatrical, and it actually happened on top of a public monument. Today, the rooftop sits empty. The staircase sits dark. You can stand directly under the arch, touch the marble, hear traffic echoing through it. But the door beside you will not open. The terrace above you might as well be on another planet. Some locked doors lead to staircases. The next one leads to a ruin you can see but never touch. The smallpox hospital on Roosevelt Island. At the southern tip of Roosevelt Island, visible from the East River Ferry and from both the Manhattan and Queens waterfronts, stands a building that looks like it belongs in a Gothic horror film. Broken stone walls, empty window frames open to the sky, ivy climbing through what used to be wards full of dying patients. This is the Renwick Smallpox Hospital, and you are not getting inside. Built in 1856, the hospital was designed by James Renwick Jr., the same architect who designed St. Patrick's Cathedral. It served one purpose: to quarantine New Yorkers infected with smallpox, one of the deadliest diseases in human history. Patients arrived by boat. Many never left. The hospital operated for nearly 20 years before closing in 1875. After that, the building served various medical purposes before being abandoned entirely. Today, the ruin is classified as a stabilized ruin. That means engineers have reinforced certain walls to prevent total collapse, but the interior remains structurally unsafe. The floor has given way in multiple sections. Portions of the roof are completely gone. Exposed stone edges could crumble under any weight. The building is fenced off with steel barriers. Security cameras monitor the perimeter. It sits on an island you can easily visit. The F train stops there. The tramway crosses to it. And yet the hospital itself is untouchable. A New York City landmark, listed on the National Register of Historic Places, visible from 3 boroughs, and completely forbidden to enter. You can stand 40 feet away and photograph every broken arch. You can see the sky through its empty windows. But between you and that building is a fence, a law, and 170 years of decay that would drop the floor out from under your first step. If a building designed by the same architect as St. Patrick's Cathedral sits rotting in plain sight, imagine what's locked behind doors that don't even have windows. That thought should sit with you. Take a second and subscribe so you're here when we open the next locked door. The New York Stock Exchange trading floor. The floor of the New York Stock Exchange at 11 Wall Street is one of the most recognized rooms in American economic life. Those images of traders in colored jackets shouting over each other beneath giant screens are burned into the country's cultural memory. Inside, on carefully controlled upper floors, sits an archive that includes one of the only surviving copies of the Veely map of 1865. That map shows Manhattan's original topography. Every stream, every hill, every contour of land before Central Park was constructed over it. It is an irreplaceable document of what the island looked like before the city erased it. The ground floor gallery has limited visiting hours and is not always open. The upper floors, where administrative offices and the deeper archival collections are housed, require official business or clearance. There is no public access to the Veely map or the historical collections without prior authorization. Roughly 42 million people visit Central Park every year. Most walk past the arsenal without a second glance. They do not know it predates the trees around it by more than a decade. They do not know that inside, a map shows a version of Manhattan that no living person has ever seen with their own eyes. A building older than Central Park hides a map of a Manhattan that no longer exists. But across the borough in Queens, an entire structure from the future sits abandoned. That map alone makes this building worth knowing about. Alike helps us keep finding stories buried inside places people walk past every day. The New York State Pavilion at Flushing Meadows. 3 concrete towers rise above the tree line in Flushing Meadows Corona Park in Queens. They are connected at their base by a massive circular observation platform. From a distance, they look like the skeleton of something that was once magnificent. That is exactly what they are. The New York State Pavilion was designed by architect Philip Johnson for the 1964 World's Fair. When it opened, it was a marvel. The observation deck featured a terrazzo floor mosaic, a map of New York State made from hand-laid tiles supplied by Texaco. The roof was translucent color panels that filtered daylight into the space below. The tallest tower rose 226 feet. Visitors rode elevators to the top and looked out over all of Queens. The fair ended. The pavilion stayed. And then it was forgotten. The translucent roof panels are gone. Decades of rain, snow, and sun have poured directly onto the terrazzo floor, cracking and destroying most of the mosaic. Graffiti covers the support columns. Rust streaks down the tower walls. The observation deck is open to the elements in every direction. Structural engineers have flagged the towers as compromised. Access has been blocked since the 1990s. Chain link fencing surrounds the base. The towers are closed entirely. Roughly 10 million people visit Flushing Meadows Corona Park every year. Most of them have no idea the pavilion exists behind the tree line, slowly collapsing. The site was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2009. Renovation proposals have come and gone for decades. None have broken ground. The pavilion just stands there, rusting the rain. 60 years past its moment, waiting for either rescue or collapse. You can see its towers from a highway. You cannot set foot inside them. What happens when a building designed for the future has no future left? In the East River, an entire island is asking the same question. North Brother Island. From the Bronx shoreline, you can see it. A dark mass of trees and crumbling roof lines sitting in the East River between the mainland and Rikers Island. North Brother Island looks like a place where time stopped. Because it did. And the city of New York has made sure nobody is going there to restart it. In 1885, Riverside Hospital was built on the island to quarantine people with diseases the city wanted to keep away from everyone else. Smallpox, typhoid, tuberculosis. If you had it, you were put on a boat and sent to North Brother. The island's most infamous resident was Mary Mallon, known as Typhoid Mary. She was the first person in the United States identified as an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever. Quarantined there in 1907, released in 1910. She was sent back permanently in 1915 after being caught working as a cook under a false name in a Manhattan maternity hospital. She spent 23 years on the island and died there in 1938. But the island's worst day came on June 15, 1904. The steamship General Slocum caught fire just offshore. Over 1,000 people died, mostly women and children from a church outing. It remains the deadliest maritime disaster in New York City history. Survivors were pulled onto the island's hospital grounds. After the hospital closed in 1963, the island was abandoned. Trees have swallowed the buildings. Roofs have collapsed into wards. Vines cover every surface. Today, it is managed by NYC Parks as a bird sanctuary, home to the black-crowned night heron. Access is completely restricted. Researchers occasionally receive permits. The public does not. You can see it from the shore. You can photograph it from a boat. You will never set foot on its ground. Over 1,000 people died inside of that island in a single afternoon. If telling their story matters, a like makes sure more people hear it. Hart Island. Hart Island sits at the northeastern edge of the Bronx in Long Island Sound. It is flat, overgrown, unremarkable from the water, and beneath its surface lie the remains of more than 1 million human beings. This is the largest public cemetery in the United States. Since 1869, New York City has used Hart Island as its potter's field, the burial ground for those who cannot afford a private funeral, whose bodies go unclaimed, or whose identities were never determined. For over a century, inmates from Rikers Island were transported by ferry to dig the graves. Adults are buried 3 deep in long trenches. Each trench holds up to 150 adults. Infant trenches hold up to 1,000 small coffins stacked in rows. There are no individual headstones, just small white markers and numbered plots on a landscape that stretches 101 acres. During the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s and 1990s, many victims were buried here after funeral homes refused to handle their bodies. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the island made international headlines when drone footage showed workers in hazmat suits burying coffins as city morgues overflowed. For 62 years, anyone could watch it happen in person. You cannot anymore. From 1939 to 2001, the NYSE operated a public viewing gallery. Tourists could buy tickets and look down at the trading floor from above. It was a legitimate attraction, a window into American capitalism working in real time. On September 11, 2001, the World Trade Center fell 5 blocks away. The gallery closed that day. It has never reopened. Today, a permanent security perimeter surrounds the building. Steel barricades line the sidewalk. Armed guards stand at every entrance year-round. The neoclassical facade with its 6 massive Corinthian columns is yours to photograph from across the street. The door behind those columns is not yours to open. More than 90% of stock trading now happens electronically. The floor itself is quieter than it was in the 1990s. But the building still functions as a symbolic and operational center of the world's largest stock exchange, valued at over $25 trillion in listed companies. That kind of value demands a certain level of restricted access. If you stand on Wall Street today, you will see tourists taking photos of the facade. You will see security guards watching those tourists. And between the two groups, you will see a door that has been closed to the American public for over 2 decades. The room beyond that door helped build and break fortunes that shaped this country. You watched it on television. You will never watch it in person again. The NYSE holds trillions in digital value, but just a few blocks away, a vault holds something you can weigh. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York Gold Vault, 50 feet below the sidewalks of Lower Manhattan. Sitting directly on the bedrock of the island, roughly 7,000 tons of gold bars rest inside a vault that most human beings will never see. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York at 33, Liberty Street, holds what is widely considered the single largest accumulation of gold on Earth. Most of it does not belong to the United States. It belongs to foreign governments and central banks who chose to store it here. The vault door is a 90-ton steel cylinder. It does not swing open. It rotates into a steel frame, creating an airtight, watertight seal. 3 independent security teams must coordinate to open it. No single person, no single team can access the gold alone. The vault sits on Manhattan schist, the same bedrock that supports the city's skyscrapers. Tunneling into it from below is considered structurally impossible. The building itself, completed in 1924, was designed by York and Sawyer. It is covered in roughly 200 tons of ornamental ironwork crafted by master metalsmith Samuel Yellen. No 2-teller window fixtures inside are identical. It looks like a Florentine Renaissance fortress because it was designed to function as one. Until recently, the Fed offered public tours that included a glimpse of the vault. Those tours are currently suspended for the general public. Limited school groups with confirmed reservations may enter. They see a sample display, not the gold. Photography is forbidden everywhere inside the building except one designated spot. If your phone appears anywhere else, security will confiscate it and escort you out. You can walk past 33 Liberty Street any day of the week. The gold is directly beneath your feet. 7,000 tons of it, worth hundreds of billions of dollars, separated from you by 50 feet of bedrock and a door that weighs more than a loaded freight train. 7,000 tons of gold beneath your shoes, and you can't touch a single bar. If that fact deserves to be heard, share this video with someone who has walked right over it without knowing. The Knickerbocker Club. On the corner of 5th Avenue and 62nd Street sits a red brick Georgian building with iron balconies and a quiet dignity that says nothing and means everything. There's no sign out front, no website, no listed phone number. This is the Knickerbocker Club. And unless your great-grandfather's last name opens very specific doors, you are not going inside. The club was founded on October 31st, 1871, by 18 members of the Union Club who believed their institution had lowered its standards. The offense? Admitting men of new industrial wealth. Alexander Hamilton Jr., August Belmont, and John Jacob Astor found this unacceptable. They formed their own club with a membership policy rooted in bloodline rather than bank balance. Franklin D. Roosevelt joined in 1903 after graduating from Harvard. 3 generations of Rockefellers applied before the family was finally admitted. That timeline tells you more about the vetting process than any description could. Membership today is believed to number between 200 and 300. The exact count is not publicly disclosed. The waiting list, if one exists, is not disclosed either. Nothing about the internal operations of the club has ever been voluntarily made public. The club remains men only. Membership is by invitation. Multiple existing members must sponsor a candidate. The vetting process weighs family lineage heavily. Money alone is not enough. Fame alone is not enough. The door opens for a very particular kind of person, and the definition of that person has not meaningfully changed in over 150 years. You can walk past 62nd Street right now. You can see the door. You can admire the ironwork. A security camera will note your presence. And that door will remain exactly as closed as it was when the Rockefellers were still waiting for their invitation. If you've ever walked past a building that felt like it was hiding something, this one actually is. Drop a comment with the most exclusive place you've ever been turned away from. The Arsenal building within Central Park. The oldest building on the land that became Central Park was standing there before the park even existed. The Arsenal, built between 1847 and 1848, was originally a munitions storage facility for the New York State National Guard. When Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux designed Central Park around the beginning in 1858, the building was already a decade old. Everything in Central Park was built after it. The Arsenal has worn many hats. It served briefly as a police precinct. It housed the earliest collections of what will become the American Museum of Natural History. It even functioned as the city's first zoo before those animals were moved to the permanent Central Park Zoo next door. Today, the building houses the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation headquarters. For decades, even the families of people buried on Hart Island were denied meaningful access. The Department of Correction controlled the island and treated it like a jail facility. Visiting required extraordinary effort and was often refused. Advocacy by the Hart Island Project, a nonprofit dedicated to transparency, slowly forced change. In 2019, jurisdiction transferred to NYC Parks. Limited public tours began in November 2023. Twice monthly, advance registration required. Tightly controlled. Most of the island remains off limits. The mass burials continue. Over 1 million people lie in that soil, and the number grows every week. You can register for a tour. You cannot wander freely among them. 1 million people buried on one island. That number needs a moment to land. If content that respects those lives matters to you, subscribing means more stories told with this kind of care. Now we go underground. And what runs beneath Manhattan streets is more dangerous than most people realize. The Con Edison steam tunnels. When you see steam rising through a Manhattan street grate, you are not looking at sewer gas. You are looking at one of the oldest and most dangerous utility systems in the United States, venting pressure directly beneath your feet. Con Edison operates a steam distribution network that stretches roughly 105 miles beneath Midtown and Lower Manhattan. The system dates to 1882, making it the first commercial district steam system in the country. It delivers pressurized steam to over 1,700 buildings for heating, cooling, sterilization, and humidity control. Hospitals depend on it. Office towers depend on it. The system generates steam at temperatures above 350 degrees Fahrenheit and pushes it through underground pipes at high pressure. The tunnels and pipe vaults that carry the steam are buried beneath active streets, alongside subway tunnels, water mains, electrical conduits, and gas lines. They are operational infrastructure maintained by Con Edison crews and authorized contractors. No public access exists. No tours. No exceptions. The danger is not theoretical. On July 18, 2007, a steam pipe near Grand Central Terminal exploded. A geyser of steam, mud, debris, and asbestos-laden insulation shot 40 stories into the air. The blast left a crater in the street large enough to swallow a tow truck. One woman died of a heart attack during the panic. Dozens were injured. The explosion shattered windows in surrounding buildings and shut down a section of Midtown for days. The pipe that failed was 83 years old. The aging system still runs beneath your feet every time you walk through Midtown. Steam vents through grates constantly. The iconic white and orange street chimneys you see on Manhattan avenues are pressure release points for this exact system. Every one of them is a reminder that 105 miles of century-old pressurized pipe sits directly below. A pipe explosion turned a Midtown street into a crater in 2007. Now imagine what's being studied on an island you can't even approach. If knowing what's under your feet right now changed how you see Manhattan, drop a comment. Have you ever walked past one of those steam vents? Plum Island Animal Disease Center. 2 miles off the tip of Long Island, surrounded by the waters between Connecticut and New York, sits an 840-acre island that has been off limits to the American public since 1954. Plum Island is home to one of the most secure biological research facilities in the country, and the research conducted there is illegal to perform anywhere on the mainland United States. The Plum Island Animal Disease Center was originally established by the U.S. Army to study foot and mouth disease, one of the most contagious animal pathogens on Earth. The virus spreads so rapidly and devastates livestock so completely that federal law prohibits its study on the continental United States. The only legal research site is Plum Island. The facility later shifted from the Army to the Department of Agriculture and eventually to the Department of Homeland Security. Access is absolute. Employees travel by a dedicated government ferry. Every person, every piece of equipment, every vehicle that leaves the island goes through full decontamination. The island maintains its own power plant, its own water treatment system, and its own internal security force. There is no public dock, no visitor center, no way onto the island without federal authorization. The facility has been the subject of conspiracy theories for decades. Claims about escaped pathogens, secret experiments, and biological weapons research have circulated since the Cold War. Most of those claims remain unsubstantiated. What is documented is that the facility handles biosafety level 3 pathogens, organisms that can cause serious or potentially lethal disease in humans through respiratory transmission. There are active discussions about relocating operations to a new national bio and agro-defense facility in Manhattan, Kansas. Whether or not the move happens, Plum Island is not opening its perimeter. The diseases studied there are too dangerous, too contagious, and too catastrophic for the island to ever welcome curiosity. Diseases too dangerous to study on the mainland, locked away on an island you'll never reach. If that's the kind of story Explored Danger should keep telling, a like lets us know. The African Burial Ground Restricted Research Areas. In 1991, construction workers digging at 290 Broadway in Lower Manhattan broke through soil and found human bones. What they uncovered was one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in New York City history, and one of the most painful. Beneath the foundation of a planned federal office building lay an 18th century burial ground. It had served New York's African and African American population, both enslaved and free, from the 1690s through the 1790s. The site appeared on a 1755 British military survey map, but had been completely buried and forgotten as the city expanded north. For over 200 years, buildings were constructed directly on top of it. The discovery halted construction and ignited years of legal battles, community advocacy, and political negotiation. Ultimately, 419 sets of remains were exhumed. Forensic anthropologists at Howard University studied them for nearly a decade. The bones told stories that documents could not. Evidence of extreme physical labor, nutritional deficiency, violence, children buried with beads and shells, adults whose spines showed compression fractures consistent with carrying enormous loads from a very young age. The remains were reinterred with ceremony in 2003. A portion of the site became the African Burial Ground National Monument, administered by the National Park Service. The ground-level memorial is open and free to visit. It sits quietly at the corner of Broadway and Elk Street. Most pedestrians walk past it without stopping. But beneath the surface, restricted research areas remain. Additional remains and artifacts may still exist in surrounding soil. Archaeological access is controlled under strict federal protocols. No public access to the subsurface zones is permitted. An estimated 15,000 to 20,000 people were buried in this ground over the course of a century. You can visit the memorial above them. You cannot reach the soil that still hold their stories. Some forbidden places are locked to protect secrets. This one is locked to protect people. If that distinction matters, share this video with someone who should know this ground exists. The NYPD Real-Time Crime Center, somewhere in Lower Manhattan. The exact address is classified. A room watches the entire city at once. The NYPD's Real-Time Crime Center is the largest municipal surveillance hub in the United States, and you are never going to see the inside of it. The RTCC was established in 2005 and has expanded significantly in the years since. It aggregates feeds from over 15,000 surveillance cameras across the 5 boroughs. It connects to a network of license plate readers, ShotSpotter gunshot detection microphones, facial recognition databases, and criminal record systems. Analysts sitting at workstations can pull up footage, cross-reference identities, and provide field detectives with real-time intelligence during active investigations. Think of it as a data fusion center, where every stream of information the NYPD collects converges into a single room. The facility is not open to the public. Its location is not published. Visits by journalists, researchers, or civilian oversight officials happen rarely and under strict supervision. Cameras inside the facility record everything. Personnel require security clearance. Even elected officials who oversee the NYPD budget have described the process of visiting the RTCC as complex and tightly managed. The center has been at the core of ongoing public debate. Privacy advocates have raised serious concerns about the scale of surveillance, the use of facial recognition technology, and the lack of transparency around how the data is stored and accessed. In 2023, New York City passed a law requiring the NYPD to publish reports on its surveillance technology use. Whether those reports satisfy public concern is a matter of active disagreement. What is not debatable is the scale. Thousands of cameras, millions of data points, one room, watching every hour of every day. You're almost certainly on its screens right now if you're anywhere in New York City. A room that watches 8 million people and answers to almost no one. But there's a place in this city that holds even more people, and none of them chose to be there. Rikers Island. Rikers Island sits in the East River between Queens and the Bronx. It covers 413 acres. A single bridge connects it to the rest of the city. And behind the razor wire, roughly 5,700 people are currently detained in one of the most notorious jail complexes on Earth. The island has functioned as a jail facility since 1932. At its peak, it held close to 15,000 inmates at a time. The complex is not a single building. It is a cluster of 10 jail facilities spread across the island, each with its own intake, housing, and security infrastructure. The bridge that connects it to Queens, the Francis R. Buono Memorial Bridge, is closed to the public. You cannot drive across it. You cannot walk across it. Access is restricted to correctional staff, legal personnel, and approved visitors of inmates. Conditions inside Rikers have been the subject of sustained national scrutiny for decades. Investigations have documented systemic violence, inadequate medical care, extended solitary confinement, and the deaths of people held in pretrial detention, individuals who have not been convicted of any crime. In 2015, the U.S. Attorney's Office described the use of force against adolescent inmates as routine and severe. In 2019, the New York City Council voted to close Rikers entirely and replace it with a network of smaller borough-based detention facilities. That plan has faced repeated delays, budget disputes, and community opposition at proposed new sites. As of now, the island remains fully operational. Every passenger landing at LaGuardia Airport flies directly over Rikers Island. Millions of people have looked down at it from 1,500 feet without ever knowing what they were seeing. A small city of detained human beings, surrounded by water, connected to the world by one bridge that is not for you. The most surveilled room in the city watches from the shadows. The largest jail sits in plain sight. And beneath both of them, one of the most beautiful spaces in New York has been locked in the dark since 1945. A place that holds thousands of people who haven't been convicted of anything. If that fact stopped you, subscribe. This channel doesn't look away from the hard stories. The City Hall subway station. Beneath City Hall Park, a ghost station waits in the dark. Red, green, and cream Guastavino tile arches curve overhead. Brass chandeliers hang from vaulted ceilings. Skylights of leaded blue glass filter daylight from the park above into a subway platform that no passenger has used in over 80 years. The City Hall station opened in 1904 as the crown jewel of the original IRT subway line, the first subway in New York City. It was designed by the firm Hines on Lafarge and built to impress. The platform curves in a tight loop at the southern end of the line, and the architects used that curve to create a cathedral-like space underground. Natural light entered through street-level skylights. The tile work was custom. The fixtures were brass. It was meant to be the most beautiful room in the system. The curve killed it. As trains grew longer through the 1930s and 1940s, the gap between the elongated cars and the tight platform became dangerous. Passengers could fall between the train and the edge. Ridership had also declined as nearby stations absorbed the traffic. On December 31st, 1945, the last passenger stepped off at City Hall Station. The lights stayed on. The chandeliers stayed hanging. The door closed. Today, The 6th train still loops through the station at the end of its downtown run. The train passes through the curved platform without stopping. For years, riders who stayed on past Brooklyn Bridge caught a brief, ghostly glimpse through the windows, tile arches and chandeliers flickering past in the dark. The MTA now asks passengers to exit before the loop. The New York Transit Museum offers occasional guided tours. They sell out almost instantly. Outside of those tours, the platform sits silent, the most beautiful subway station ever built, 15 feet below a public park. Sealed from the city it was designed to serve, a cathedral built for commuters, sealed in the dark for 80 years. But City Hall Station at least had a purpose everyone understood. What lies deeper beneath Midtown was never meant to be found at all. That station alone proves New York hides masterpieces underground. A like helps us keep uncovering them. The Mole People tunnels beneath Grand Central. 7 stories below Grand Central Terminal, beneath the lowest subway platform, beneath the utility corridors, beneath the infrastructure that keeps Midtown running. There are tunnels where people live. They are not supposed to be there. Most New Yorkers do not know they exist. The tunnel network beneath Grand Central extends deep into the bedrock of Manhattan. The deepest known level, sometimes called M42, sits roughly 10 stories underground. During World War II, this level housed the power converters for the entire train system, infrastructure so critical that armed guards patrolled it around the clock. Today, portions of the deep tunnels remain active utility infrastructure. Others have become something else entirely. Since at least the 1980s, homeless communities have established encampments in the deepest, most forgotten sections of this tunnel system. Journalist Jennifer Toth documented these communities in her 1993 book, The Mole People, describing hundreds of individuals living in complete darkness beneath the city. While some of Toth's specific claims have been disputed, the existence of people living in the tunnels has been confirmed repeatedly by Amtrak workers, MTA personnel, and outreach organizations. Conditions are brutal. No natural light, temperatures that swing from freezing in winter to suffocating in summer, exposed electrical infrastructure carrying 600 volts of direct current runs along the tunnel walls, rats, standing water, air quality that degrades the deeper you go. The risk of being struck by a train in the active sections is constant and real. Access to the deep tunnels is illegal. Amtrak and the MTA police monitor entry points. The tunnels themselves are structurally uncertain. Ceilings sag, floors are uneven, and decades of water infiltration have weakened walls in unpredictable places. Going down there without authorization is a criminal trespass charge at minimum and a genuine threat to your life at maximum. 7 stories down, people live in total darkness beside 600-volt rails. And yet there's another tunnel in this city where an entire community built something almost beautiful, the Freedom Tunnel. Beneath Riverside Park on Manhattan's Upper West Side, a rail tunnel stretches roughly 2.5 miles from 72nd Street to 122nd Street. It was built in the 1930s for freight trains. By the 1980s, it was abandoned by the railroad and claimed by people with nowhere else to go. They called it the Freedom Tunnel. The name stuck. At its peak in the early 1990s, an estimated 200 to 300 people lived in the tunnel. They were not simply sheltering. Some built structures with wooden frames, scavenged furniture, and working electricity tapped from overhead lines. Small communities formed. There were rules, territories, a social order that developed entirely underground. Graffiti artist Chris Freedom Pape created enormous murals along the tunnel walls, figures and landscapes that turned raw concrete into a gallery that almost nobody saw. Amtrak reclaimed the tunnel in the mid-1990s. Residents were evicted. Encampments were demolished. Many of the people displaced had lived underground for years and had no housing alternatives. Some were relocated through outreach programs. Others simply moved to different tunnels. Today, Amtrak's Empire Line runs through the Freedom Tunnel on active tracks. Freight and passenger trains pass through regularly. The tunnel is fence-gated and patrolled. Several of Freedom's murals survived the eviction and are still visible from inside passing trains. Ghostly figures on concrete walls, lit for a split second by a train window before vanishing back into the dark. Entering the Freedom Tunnel without authorization is criminal trespass. The active rail traffic makes it genuinely lethal. Trains approach with minimal warning in a space with no shoulder, no alcove deep enough to guarantee safety, and limited visibility. At least one person has been struck and killed inside the tunnel. A tunnel where hundreds of people built a community in total darkness, decorated it with art, and called it freedom. Now it belongs to trains again. The art stays. The people are gone. If a tunnel where people built lives in the dark and called it freedom doesn't stay with you, nothing will. Share this video. Some stories need to travel further than a tunnel. Fort Tilden, at the far western end of the Rockaway Peninsula in Queens, past the last bus stop, past the end of the paved road, a collection of concrete military bunkers sits half buried in the sand dunes facing the Atlantic Ocean. This is Fort Tilden. The Army left decades ago. The bunkers remain, and you are not supposed to go inside them. Fort Tilden was established in 1917 as a coastal defense installation, part of a network designed to protect New York Harbor from naval attack. During World War II, the fort was armed with massive 16-inch guns capable of firing shells over 25 miles out to sea. The gun batteries were mounted in reinforced concrete casemates built into artificial hills. Underground ammunition magazines, plotting rooms, and connecting tunnels ran beneath the surface. At its peak, the fort housed over 2,000 military personnel. The Army decommissioned Fort Tilden in 1974. The guns were removed. The buildings were emptied. The fort was transferred to the National Park Service as part of Gateway National Recreation Area. The beach is open. The trails through the dunes are open. The bunkers are not. The concrete structures have deteriorated over 50 years of coastal exposure. Interior floors have collapsed. Ceilings show stress fractures. Standing water fills lower chambers. Rusted rebar protrudes from crumbling walls. The National Park Service has posted fencing and warning signs. Entry is prohibited. Despite the restrictions, the bunkers remain a draw for urban explorers and graffiti artists. The underground chambers are dark, flooded in places, and structurally unpredictable. In 2016, a man fell through a deteriorated floor inside one of the bunkers and had to be extracted by emergency responders. The Park Service has repeatedly stated that the structures are unsafe for any entry. You can stand on the beach and watch the sun set over the Atlantic. Behind you, concrete bunkers built to stop a naval invasion sit silently crumbling into the sand. The ocean is yours. The bunkers are not. Coastal guns that could fire 25 miles out to sea, now crumbling into sand dunes you can almost touch. But the most forbidden spaces in New York aren't on beaches or islands. They're directly beneath the subway you ride every day. The subway's abandoned tunnels and ghost stations. New York City's subway system has been under construction, expansion, demolition, and rerouting since 1900. In that time, stations have been closed, platforms sealed, tunnels rerouted, and entire stretches of track abandoned in place. The result is a shadow network beneath the functioning subway. Dozens of spaces that still exist in the dark alongside trains carrying 5 million riders a day. Beyond the City Hall loop, the abandoned infrastructure is vast. The lower level of the Court Street station in Brooklyn sits unused except as storage for the Transit Museum's vintage rolling stock. The original platform at Worth Street on the 6th line was closed in 1962 and bricked over. The 2nd Avenue subway project left behind tunnel segments that sat incomplete for nearly 50 years before construction resumed. Some platforms were shortened rather than fully closed, leaving ghostly extensions visible from passing trains. Urban explorers have documented these spaces for decades. The photographs are striking. Tile work in original condition from the early 1900s. Station signage from the 1950s still mounted on walls. Maintenance equipment rusted in place for decades. Water dripping from ceilings and tunnels that have not been lit in half a century. The dangers of unauthorized entry are severe and specific. The third rail carries 625 volts of direct current and is not always clearly visible in poorly lit areas. Active trains run on adjacent tracks at speeds up to 55 miles per hour with minimal clearance. Air quality in sealed or poorly ventilated sections degrades quickly. Structural integrity is not guaranteed in tunnels that have gone without maintenance for decades. And the penalty for being caught is a criminal trespass charge and near certain arrest by MTA police or NYPD. The Transit Museum in Brooklyn Heights, which is excellent and free on certain days, offers periodic access to some of these historic spaces through organized events. That is the only legal way to see them. Everything else is a cell phone confiscation and a ride in a squad car. New York built more subway than it could use. What abandoned is still down there. Ghost platforms, sealed stairways, tiled arches in the dark. A parallel city beneath the city. Closed to everyone who rides above it every single day. 20 places. Some hold gold. Some hold bones. Some hold darkness that hasn't seen light in a century. Every one of them sits inside a city of 8 million people who walk past them, ride over them, and live above them without knowing what's there. That is what makes New York unlike any other city on earth. The layers it refuses to show you are deeper than the ones it does. The place that stayed with you longest from this list is the one worth sitting with for a moment. If explored danger helped you see New York differently today, the only thing left to do is carry that with you, and maybe wonder, the next time you walk a Manhattan sidewalk, what exactly is beneath your feet?